I brought my glasses so I would look like I do in the picture. Make some noise, yo. So I'm Mike King. Lots to talk to you about today. I know the theme out here is The Wizard of Oz, but I grew up on The Wiz, so, you know. I'm going to keep it black, but I'm going to keep it brief. You know, contrary to popular opinion, I'm actually not the real estate agent for that house. But nevertheless, you can follow me on Twitter where we share all types of SEO stuff. So I represent a company called iPullRank, which is actually my company. We're based in New York City. We do a lot of SEO for a lot of people. You know, here's a NASCAR slide. That may not matter so much to you because we're talking about, you know, nonprofit stuff and so on. I've also worked with like Big Brothers, Big Sisters, lupus.org. I'm on the board for an organization called RAND. And a lot of what I do is support all of them through fundraising by using digital means, primarily SEO. In addition, I also make music. So you can check that out too. But commercials are over. Let's talk about what you're here for. So here's the thing. Some of y'all may not even need SEO. And, you know, I was going to do the thing where I walk off, but Nathan killed that for me already. So here's the thing. It's very difficult to do SEO. And one of the reasons for that is, you know, as a nonprofit, you may not be set up to do it. You can't necessarily compete in the long term because you may not have the short term rather. You may not have the things in place that you need in order to make that happen. So SEO is very much a long game. It's not the type of thing where like, okay, you do it for 3 months and then suddenly you're the best at it forever, unless you already have a strong website that has the authority to support that. And so you may not have the link equity. And that's what I mean when I'm talking about authority. The quantity and quality of third-party sites linking to you in order for you to rank. That right there is one of the most difficult things to make happen in SEO. You may also be kind of hamstrung by the platform that you're on. So, you know, many of you are probably using CMSs that are very specific to your space, but some of you may be using things like Webflow or Wix or whatever that don't have the capabilities to allow you to do all the things that you need to do for SEO. Some of these platforms have gotten better, but nevertheless, they don't give you the level of control that you might need. And that's why your analytics look like this. Well, they used to look like this because you're on GA3, but as Krista said, you need to be on GA4. I'm bringing it all together for you. So that said, it may be fine for you to stick with paid media or earned media or whatever you're doing because the owned media stuff that you need to do for SEO may not be possible. That said, if you do want to do SEO, I'm going to give you the whole blueprint. Now, let's talk about the technical setup for success. So which CMS should you be using? I mentioned that there's a bunch out there that aren't all that good for SEO. Well, there's many CMSs out there. And like I said, there may be folks in the expo hall that have a CMS very specific to what you do, and they may have already baked in SEO. I don't know about those. What I do know is about the ones that, you know, are more common that everyone else uses, right? So the main things that you need to be thinking about specifically for SEO with your CMS is speed. Is it as fast as possible? Are there things that you can do to optimize it? Flexibility. Do you have the ability to add all types of different content to your site? Are they limiting you to just like, oh, products or just landing pages specific to donation and what have you? Do you have the ability to make any sort of content that you're looking for? And then also accessibility. Can a search engine actually crawl the content that you give it? Well, you may or may not know that WordPress powers 40% of the web. And if you're someone who only heard about WordPress like back in the day when it first came out and everyone was like, oh, that's not enterprise, we can't use that for big sites, that's no longer true. And if you're doing anything related to e-commerce, and what I mean by that is if you are doing any sort of like donations online, well, a lot of different platforms have the capability for that. And so as far as those, WooCommerce is also the one that's used the most. So effectively what I'm saying is you can just use WordPress. Now, the main thing to know here is that speed is really important to Google in a variety of ways. And so they've been obsessed with speed for as long as I can remember, as long as I've been doing SEO at least. And they recently, in the last 2 years, came out with something called Core Web Vitals. Core Web Vitals is 3 different measures that they use to determine how fast a website is. They measure this based on what they can see when they access your website, and then also they capture what are called real user metrics that they store based on when other people go to your website. So if you look at this, you'll see that these are the top CMSs when it comes to Core Web Vitals. Now, WordPress isn't the #1, but there are still a lot of opportunities where you can speed it up. So bottom line is that if you're looking to build something and you have the opportunity to kind of start from scratch or re-platform, I'd say go for WordPress or Shopify because they both allow you pretty much everything you need to be effective at SEO. Now, once you've made that decision, the right decision that I just gave you, choose a pretty simple theme, not one that's going to have a whole bunch of bells and whistles to it. Pull something that just allows you to do the things that you're looking for pretty much. And then you want to set your preferred domain. So, is it going to be the www? Is it going to be secure, non-secure, whatever it is? I would recommend that it's the www and secure. Not for any specific reason on the www, but the secure does give you a rankings boost. So then any problem content or URLs that you've either gotten rid of or you've had to replace, you want to set up redirects, specifically 301 redirects. And then you want to have a simple site architecture. You don't want to have like 10 folders deep. In fact, you want to be as close to the root as possible with your folder structure so that you have the same level of authority to that content. From there, you want to make sure you have your robots.txt file in place. So effectively, if there are things that you want to block from Google, make sure you set those rules up, and all these platforms allow you to do this. And then you want to set up caching, specifically in WordPress, so that it's as fast as possible. And then make sure you're optimizing for your images to be as fast as possible. So using newer formats, not just PNGs and GIFs and things like that. I know some people say GIF. I'm not with that. It's GIF. You feel me, though. So make your images as fast as possible using like the newer formats. And then also use image compression. There's different plugins for that as well. And set up breadcrumbs across your site. That's not just an e-commerce thing. If you have a site that's reasonably big enough, there is value in setting breadcrumbs, not just from a user experience perspective, but you're also reinforcing what's called your internal linking structure, which is how you tell Google this is an important page, specifically around the keywords that you have in your breadcrumbs. And then one of the last things we want to think about here is the schema plugin. So schema is a way that you mark up your content to indicate to Google what things are in here, not just the words. So people, places, and things that you want to indicate are represented in your content. And as far as any like SEO specific plugins, Yoast is good enough for whatever it is that you need to do. One more thing you need to do is set up Google Search Console. And so at that point, your technical SEO is pretty much done, at least the table stakes stuff. So of course, that's when the flood of traffic just comes in, right? Well, that's slide 40 out of 122. So maybe not. If you want to diagnose your SEO issues, there's a great tool out there that you can use called Screaming Frog SEO Spider. So typically, if you've done the things I've just listed off here, most of your technical SEO will be done, and the things that are kind of the more outlier things that you need to do will be uncovered by this tool, which basically will just crawl your website and then say, hey, you've got all these problems, and then you can hand that off to a developer or something like that to fix those. But the more strategic end of what you need to be doing is more related to the keyword research and the content optimization. And that's where I'm going to spend a lot of time talking to y'all today. So when people search, they're looking to fulfill some sort of a need. The problem is that we as marketers or as site owners, we often think of the keyword abstraction, not thinking about there being a person behind that search. So that represents their demand effectively. And the great thing about search is that we get the user's intent. And I'm not just talking about organic search for SEO, it's also true of paid search. You get to know what is it that they searched in order to get to you. And so as a content creator or as a marketer or what have you, you have the opportunity to be reactive to that. So the way that we stratify keywords in the SEO world is like the terms that have a lot of search volume that are pretty broad, we call those head terms. And then in the middle, you have the chunky middle. They're more like they're not necessarily someone who is ready to buy something, but it's more specific. And then after that, you've got like the longer tail keywords, the ones that don't have a lot of search volume, but people are generally looking to take action from those. And so if you're a website that doesn't have a ton of authority, that long tail is where you're going to have to play until you get that authority to drive that traffic. So, that's what I just said. I got ahead of myself. My apologies. But really what you want to do is map your keywords to a funnel. And so, the same way you think about the funnel across anything else you do in marketing, except in your case, we're talking about donations rather than purchases. But people are searching different levels of keywords with different search volumes at different stages. So in this example here, the keyword flowers, you search for that, you don't really know what you're ready to do yet. But as you're getting through this process, you're like, okay, well, I'm actually thinking of going on a first date. Well, what are the best flowers for me to think about bringing for a first date? Okay, chrysanthemums are fantastic. Cool, let me buy those. Oh, my date went well. Now I want to get a flower every month for this person that I'm dating. To bring this more closer to home, here's an example of how this might look for the ACLU. So I'm imagining we all know about the Roe versus Wade decision. A user may search for that because they're like, oh, wow, what's going on in the news? I want to learn more information. They read about that. They're kind of incensed. They go back to search. They then search for abortion rights. They read a bit more. Then they're like, okay, how do I support abortion rights? And then that brings them to the ACLU. And then they're like, cool, I want to donate to the ACLU. They search for that. So you see how this is a whole journey that you need to create your content around based on what it is that people are searching. I didn't make these keywords up. I found them, based on the different keyword research tools. And so when you get to that loyalty phase in this case, you may be someone, or this person may be someone who wants to donate monthly. And so their keyword might be ACLU monthly donation. So ultimately, once you've created or identified those keywords, you want to make sure you're creating the right content for the right stage. Someone who's looking to make a donation isn't looking for an infographic. They don't necessarily care. They might be looking for an infographic just because they want to share information with their community or what have you. So don't measure your infographics based on donations. But someone who is looking for a donation may be looking for a guide on like, how do I donate? Or what do I get out of donations? Things like that. And so effectively, you want to be measuring that content with the right KPIs, aligned with the right type of content, with the right keywords in that stage. So the tool that I would recommend using for this is SEMrush. It's pretty much the best all-in-one SEO tool. And so like I said, I go to this tool, I put in ACLU and see what are all the keywords related to this. And then when I want to go deeper in the funnel, I put in a different filter related to the keyword donate. And now I have a list of all the words that people are searching for related to ACLU and donations, also what their search volumes are, what the difficulty is. So when you see right here, whether you have these dots where it's like yellow and red, sometimes green, that's the keyword difficulty. So that allows me to figure out, okay, which keywords do I want to go after that are going to be easier for me so I can really show that value. Now, ultimately, what do you do with this? You have this list of keywords. You have them aligned with the user journey. You might even have them aligned with different user segments. Well, ultimately, what you're going to want to do is build pretty robust content assets. Guides that are, you see them a lot, like ultimate guides on a subject tend to do very well for whatever your keyword topics are. Now, you also want to consider that if you want to be effective at this, you can't just be like, okay, I've got my list of keywords. Let me just write a 500-word article with the stock photo and all of that. It has to be 10 times better than whatever else is out there on the subject. You can't really slack on that. You've got to make really awesome content in order to attract the links for the authority. So what we often do with our clients is what we call state of content. And so you'll take a subject matter and you'll talk about the state of that thing. So in this example, you've got the state of car insurance. We grab all this data on car insurance, and then we see, how can we put together a pretty robust data visualization driven piece of content, because not only will it attract links because it's, pretty comprehensive, but it will also rank for a variety of different words. So when someone who is a journalist is writing about something related to car insurance and they're looking up stats, they come across this and then they link to it in their New York Times article or their Huffington Post article. And that's the way that you can drive links at scale. So how does Google understand content? We've been talking about this more like from the strategic layer, but if you wouldn't mind, I want to nerd out with you a little bit because I think this is really important. Now, when Google sees a piece of content, it takes the page, breaks the page into paragraphs, breaks the paragraphs into sentences, breaks the sentences into words, looks for what are called entities, so people, places, and things, and then looks for the relationships between all of those things. And so it's not just about, hey, did you use this word 59 times because you want to rank for it? It's like, do these words relate similarly in the way that pages that we already have ranking are doing it? So as an example, let's say I want to rank for the keyword football. And all the ranking sites are talking about how the Philadelphia Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl, because they are. And, you know, if you write an article because you're from here and you don't believe that and you don't include it, you're not going to rank. That's just how it is. And so oftentimes people ask, well, how long does my content need to be? That's actually the wrong question. It's really, does your content answer the questions that content that rank for your keywords do as well? Because it's an expectation that Google has built. So as you might imagine, the more authoritative content, the better it performs. And this is an example of a measure called content topical authority that a tool called Market Muse computes, and it's their own like proprietary metric. But there's a variety of ways that you can compute something similar, and you often will see something like this, like, okay, if it's more related to the topic, it also ranks better. Now, Google has their own version of what I just described. What I originally described, the whole model of like, you know, pages to paragraphs, so on and so forth. That is like general for the whole computer science field of information retrieval. But Google has their own version that they've built where they're leveraging a lot of data that they've collected over the, what is it, like 20 or so years, 30 years that Google has existed. I don't know, time is not a thing. The pandemic has ruined me. So ultimately what they do is they score the content versus whatever the query is. They'll take the different features of the content, first some content features, also some linking features within the site, outside of the site as well, and then they come up with this score, this composite score, as it relates to a given query. And so another thing that Google does is they store versions of your content forever so they can compare against it. So the image on the bottom is showing you what their file system looks like. It's very similar to how the Wayback Machine works, where you've got, you know, many copies of the same content based on when it changes. So I say all that to say that if you make a change dramatically to your page and then, you know, suddenly it doesn't rank, it may be partially because Google is comparing you to yourself. And so the scoring functions, there's a series of these. And when we talk about the Google algorithm, that's what it is. It's called a scoring function. And so there are things that happen, you know, right when you make your query. There's things that happen when they do the document scoring. There's things that happen afterwards that may adjust how things rank. And so when you hear about Google making algorithm updates, it's a lot of this that's being adjusted. Now, to kind of simplify this document scoring, imagine that there are 2 content factors, a speed factor, and 2 linking factors, right? And each of these factors has a weight. So each of these factors may be multiplied to indicate that it's more important. And then let's say these are what the weights might look like. So you got 3, 6, 1, 2, 2, right? So what we do as SEOs, because we know the links are the most important thing, we do a lot of things related to links. And then what Google does is they turn those weights down on the links. So it may have always been that those content factors were more important. And so if you focus more there, you'll get more value out of what you're doing. Now, 2 concepts that inform all of this. One is called Zipf's law, and it basically says that words are similarly distributed across the same series of documents that are related to each other. What I mean by that is if you and I are both experts on the same subject, we're going to use the same words to describe that. And so Google also has that expectation that you would use the same words if you're talking about a subject that they already know about. Another law is called Heap's law, where it basically says that vocabulary on a subject grows at a steady rate. So same sort of idea. If you and I are talking about the same subject, we will start to talk about it using the same words, and those words will grow over time. Like based on the knowledge on that subject, those words will change at the same rate. So I say all that to say that Google has statistical expectations of your content. It's not just about using the same word 500 times. Here's a tool that will help you with this. It's called Phrase. There's a number of tools out there in the space, but this one is relatively inexpensive. And what it does is you put in your target keywords, it pulls the pages that are already ranking, and it gives you suggestions of what your words to use in order to make your content more relevant. All right, moving on to structured data. So structured data is a way for you to tell Google that here's what these pages are about. Not just the words themselves, but what are the things that you're talking about. And if you don't have the authority, again, there's a lot of opportunities for you to use your brand to get that visibility that you need. So there's a series of resources that Google makes available. The one you can just look at, it's probably the most robust, schema.org. They talk about the different vocabularies that you can use. But here's a just quick look through things that you can use. So oftentimes when you search for a branded term, you'll see on the right this box, or really more of a rectangle, that shows you the brand's logo, shows you some information about that brand. We call this a knowledge panel. You can fill this in with the same code that you see on the right, basically giving you some information that Google can surface at that section. If you have any how-to content, you can mark that up especially so it takes up more space in the search engine results page. It'll show videos, it'll show different sections of your content directly in there, and then you can have users click in directly to that section as well. With videos, Google is marking these up kind of on their own. They're taking a series of transcripts, and then based on your query, it'll say, this is a specific section that you need to go to in order to find out more information about it. If you have any products, which you may not, but if you do, you can mark those up. They can have their ratings and different features of them right there in the SERP as well. Books, same sort of thing. You can have those pop up above the organic results based on how you mark them up. And then search action allows you to search within your site directly from Google. So you're really just saying like, hey, here's my search box. Google shows it right there. And then you can get users directly to where you want them to go. And if you have any data sets, so like some of the data that Nathan was showing, if he wanted to make that available via Google, he could mark that up, and then users could go directly to the data points that they're interested in. And then if you're doing any events, which I imagine many of you are, specifically around fundraising, you can mark those up, and they show up right there in the SERPs like you're seeing. All right, so I've mentioned link building a lot. I've told you it's difficult. What are we going to do about that? Well, if you're going to be competitive for any sort of term, and I suspect that a lot of the terms related to donation are very competitive, you need to build links. And if you're going to do so, it's going to be difficult. It's effectively you're reaching out to people on the internet that you don't know, and you're saying like, hey, can you do this thing for me? And they're like, you got money? And you're like, nah, I'm trying to get this link. Can you help me out? And what it really comes down to is you've got to have content that's compelling enough for someone you don't know to link back to it. So if you're going to do this yourself, I would recommend checking out this guide on backlinko.com. It's the ultimate list of link building strategies. And you can basically toggle to say like, hey, I have this, I don't have this, and it'll give you a series of tactics that you can leverage in order to make it happen. But again, it's going to be very difficult because it's a lot of effort to make this happen. And what I would rather you do is focus on your PR efforts. If you've got people doing PR for you, you can just say like, hey, make sure they link back to us. Make sure they're linking to, whatever page you want them to. But more often than not, they're going to link to the homepage. So if ultimately you do want to give it a shot doing this whole link building thing, there's a tool called BuzzStream, which allows you to really just manage this effectively. It's effectively like a CRM for link building. But I don't want you to do link building. It's not a good use of your time. Get some interns, farm it out overseas or something. But what you should do, here's a quick hack. Don't build links, steal someone else's traffic. Bear with me for a second. So there's a site called Quora. Not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's a Q&A site. It's a social platform, basically. What you'll want to do is go to SEMrush, put in Quora.com, and then in this organic research section, filter for keywords that are related to you. Now imagine I am with an organization that raises money for Crohn's disease. So I put in Crohn's as my filter, and then I look for keywords that are most related to what I would want to rank for. And then I look for an article on Quora that I think I have a better answer for, and I go to that article and I write whatever that answer is, and I link back to myself. And then effectively what you're doing is you're taking their organic search traffic from referral traffic. So someone comes and they're reading, they're like, oh, this is great, it's a great guide. And you're like, yeah, I got more information, come here. Those people will then come to your site. So it's not gonna be organic search traffic, it's gonna be someone else's organic search traffic. Think about it. All right, so do best practices matter? This will be a real quick because I only got a few minutes left. So if your site isn't big, you don't have a lot of authority, best practices are gonna matter a lot. If you've got a video where someone is talking, you need a transcript. If you've got an image, you should mark it up because Google isn't necessarily gonna use their capabilities of understanding images on your website. So giving it alt tags and wrapping it with copy that's related to it is gonna be very helpful to its relevance. If you've got content that you're making that you're really invested in, you need to make metadata that's gonna be compelling. A lot of people don't think of the page title and the meta description as something worth spending time on. And it's really about having your content making a great search, first impression on that user. So make sure that you're focusing on click-through rates for your meta descriptions, not flooding it with keywords. I think of a meta description as an advertising tagline for that page. So make it as compelling as possible and make sure you have an actual copywriter write it. Don't give it to an SEO person. As far as duplicate content, yes, if your site is not large, you definitely don't want to have duplicate content. If you have a big site, it actually doesn't matter. And you want to make sure that you're embracing what's called keyword prominence. So Google cares about where you're talking about these subjects. Where if the subtext that you want to rank for is at the bottom of the page, is not considered as important as if you had it at the top of the page. And always be linking. Link out to pages throughout your site wherever it is relevant, because that gives those pages more authority, not just from the internal linking structure, but from the external links that are pointing to your site as well. So I named this thing, there's no place like homepage, because the homepage is the most powerful place on your website for a variety of reasons. Not just SEO, but it's really powerful for SEO. And what I love about the ACLU homepage is that at the top there, they put their donation widget front and center. Like you have to close it in order to actually engage with the content. But what they also do is they fill this page up with a lot of text-related content because they understand that this page is always going to have the most authority on the website. And so as a result, they know that they can redistribute that authority through the links that they have, through the content that they create, because they know that page will rank for a lot of things. So here's an example. Specifically, ACLU.org, their homepage, their homepage drives 12% of their organic search traffic. And as you can see over here, it also has the most keywords, 11,000 keywords that it ranks for. And if you look at their links as well, these are both the representations of the homepage. These pages both have over 1 million links. So that's where all the authority lives. A lot of people are so precious about their home pages that they don't want to put any content there. Disabuse yourself of that notion. Put more content there. So, wrapping it up, just to bring it back to where we started, build a technically sound website, either using Shopify or WordPress. Focus on the long tail, build up your authority, grow from there. Make sure you have keywords that align with the stages of your user journey. You got to think of a journey, not just the keyword itself. There is a person looking to do something on the other side of that screen. And then use tools to optimize that content so you meet the statistical expectations that Google has. Mark up your content with structured data so you capitalize on more of those branded opportunities. And use PR rather than thinking about link building. And ease on down the road. That's all I got. Oh, one more thing. Like I said, you can follow me on the Twitters. I'm also on Instagram. I have lovely pictures of my children on there. We also do this thing we call the SEO Weekly, which is like our version of that show that John Oliver does for SEO. My guy Garrett, he does that. I'm from a company called iPullRank. And, holler at me. That's all I got.